we are gonna watch two of the most scariest stories. Okay? Let's get into it. Okay? First one looks pretty scary.
Hello, my name is Douglas Escobar. I've been an Uber driver for a few years, but I already have a lot of experience on the road, since before that, I was a truck driver for more than 25 years. The story I have to tell you may seem unbelievable, but it's true. In all the time I've been driving, I've seen all kinds of impressive things, but nothing like what I saw that night, and believe me, I'm a very hard person to impress. It all started during a completely normal night. I don't know if you know this, but we Uber drivers don't just transport people, we also transport objects. I was making small trips until I suddenly received a notification on my app. It was to transport a small box according to the client. He had to give it to his girlfriend, who worked in a 24 hours veterinary. I only received this type of trip once every few months, so I wasn't going to waste the opportunity to take it. Not that this type of trip pays better or has any special benefits, it's just that, having been a truck driver for so long, I was used to traveling alone and missed it a bit. I drove to the meeting point where I was supposed to meet Pierce, the customer who was supposed to give me the small box. I drove until I reached an apartment that was quite old and in terrible condition. The neighborhood didn't look too dangerous, so I wasn't too afraid to wait in that area, although I must admit that the apartment looked out of place. While I was waiting for Pierce, I checked the detail he left me once again, as there were some things that didn't quite fit. The message said that I had to go into the vet's office and ask for Helen, and say that the box was from her boyfriend. Was this a surprise, and Helen wasn't expecting him to come? If so, why would she send him a surprise in an Uber and not him if it was only a 7 or 8 block ride? While I was asking myself all these questions, I saw that the waiting time was ticking away, but Pierce still didn't open the door of the apartment. I looked one more time and thought I saw him. Behind the 2 apartment doors, there was a man waving at me, waving his hand. I looked back at the Uber app to remember Pierce's name when in as little as 2 or 3 seconds I looked down. Suddenly, the customer was next to me. Oh, you're Pierce, aren't you? Yes, sir. Sorry I'm late. This Pierce guy, there was something strange about him. He seemed very kind and polite. He had a soft and gentle smile. Something about him made me very uncomfortable. I felt that if I stayed too long near him, something bad would happen to me. But you know what was the weirdest thing? He didn't seem like a bad guy. I didn't feel like he was planning something or trying to do something bad to me. It just gave me a bad feeling. Excuse me, sir. Is something wrong? No, I'm sorry. I just blanked out for a second. Tell me, I have to take this box to the vet, right? Yes. It's very important that I do. If Helen asks, tell her that as strange as it may seem to her, it was me who sent it to her. You can describe me if she doesn't believe you. Okay. Is there anything else I should know? No, that's all. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Hey pal, you forgot to pay me. As soon as this man appeared out of nowhere, he disappeared. The door to his apartment was still closed, the elevator was nowhere near, and no one near us looked confused. I didn't understand how that Pierce guy had done that, but I was happy to leave as soon as possible. The place was giving me a very bad feeling. I drove a few blocks to the vet's office. Once I got there, I got out of the car and asked for Helen. The vet was empty. It was pretty hidden for a vet that was open 24 hours a day, but I was sure that sooner or later I would have a client. I could tell it was a pretty good place. Once Helen came out, she looked at me curiously, not knowing who I was. I gave her the box and she grabbed it without understanding what was going on. When I told her who it was from, her eyes got as big as lanterns, and then she started crying and ran away. At the same time, the other veterinary employee got angry with me and invited me to leave, but not before insulting me from top to bottom. I wanted to tell the girl to pay me, but I could see that it would be impossible. I was about to give Pierce a negative rating and file a complaint with Uber when suddenly someone knocked on my window. It was Helen, who was still crying, but still approached my car.
Are you sure that box was given to you by Pierce? Is that the man in this picture?
In the photo, you could see Pierce and Helen kissing. There was no doubt it was the same person who gave me the box. Yeah, it was him. There was no doubt.
Pierce has been missing for over 2 months. I'm sorry I didn't believe him. It just seemed implausible that if Pierce was really here, he would send a box and he wouldn't come. Unless he couldn't.
Miss, I'm sure of what I saw. He came out of an apartment a few blocks from here and came to give me that box.
His apartment. Listen, I guess he didn't pay you for your trip, did he?
Welcome to Fort Idle. This is your military base, son, and you're gonna make this the best military base in the world. I need you to train.
Listen, I guess he didn't pay you for your trip, did he?
Oh, speaking of that.
And the box he gave me was a cell phone. His cell phone. As soon as I turned it on, I saw a picture. I know that picture. Pierce and I were riding our bikes there. Can you give me a ride? I'll pay for the last ride in this one.
I'm sorry, I don't think I can. I have to meet a minimum of Uber trips, and I don't think I should get into this.
Oh, okay. I understand.
With that said, Helen left disappointed with the cell phone in her hand. A few seconds later, I was ready to start a new trip. My cell phone started ringing, and before I accepted the ride, I noticed that the client was a few meters away. It was Helen. Okay, why not? After I accepted the ride, the door of the vet's office opened again, and out came Helen in a jumpsuit. During the trip, Helen began to tell me some of the things that had happened. Everything was going well between Pierce and Helen, but one day, he left and just didn't come back. Helen told me how over the next few days, strange things started happening in their house. Chairs began to move by themselves, her room began to feel colder, and at times, she felt watched. All until one night. That night, Helen woke up in the wee hours of the morning. She felt someone knocking on her door. Still hoping it was Pierce or the police giving her bad news, she ran desperately to the front door. She looked through the hole in the door, and there he was. Pierce was just standing there, waiting for her as he always used to do when he came to visit her. Excited and in tears, Helen opened the door, and behind her, there was no one there. Helen looked around, confused, and saw footprints with dirt walking up to her doorway, but there were no footprints indicating that whoever had walked up to the door had left. Wait, so you're suggesting that Pierce is...
I know he's dead. That's why I got that way when you mentioned it. But that's also why I believed you that he might have given you that box.
But why me? What do I have to do with it?
I guess nothing. Maybe you were at the wrong time and place.
Story of my life. Did you see that? That was your boyfriend. He was at my window. This doesn't make any sense.
Is this it?
What?
The picture that was on Pierce's cell phone. That's it.
Helen desperately gets out of the car and runs to the dirt road. No cars are passing, and the place is totally uninhabited.
Here, there's something.
Before I could see what was happening, Helen started digging in the dirt, and I went to help her. After a few minutes, we found it. Pierce's body was already in the ground, decomposing. Helen wanted to hug him, but I quickly pushed her away and restrained her. This was a crime scene. We called the police, and once they came, Pierce's case was ruled a homicide. With all the new leads, checking cameras, and talking to neighbors, they were able to piece together what had happened. A few minutes before the disappearance, cameras spotted Pierce walking between two men. Pierce looked terrified, clearly walking against his will, most likely threatened. Over the weeks, Helen told me that they managed to find these two men. The stories they had from that day were different from each other. Neither of them expected to be caught. One of them confessed the truth. At first, they tried to rob Pierce, but one thing led to another, and seeing him so nice and friendly, they beat him to death on the road, then buried him and left. Since that day, Helen and I have been great friends, as I am also from the same neighborhood. In time, she was able to rebuild her life. Unlike me, she never saw Pierce again. She no longer needed to, she knew he was at peace. As for me, I saw him one more time. One day, I was finishing a trip near the apartment where Pierce had given me the box. As I passed by that apartment, I saw Pierce once again. He was staring at me, bowing his head with a smile, a sign of thanks. Okay, Rick. We heard you were ready to talk. If you want to tell us everything, from start to finish. I don't know if you'll believe me. Give it a try. You have no idea the
This
things
is
that
the
we've heard.
second story, guys.
Okay, I'll tell you how it all started. It started on a Friday night. I remember it was pretty dark that day. I was leaving my house and my Uber had already arrived. I remember I had a big fight with my mother because she wouldn't let me go to my best friend's house. After all, it was too late. Can you imagine? I'm 23 years old and my mother thought she could forbid me to go out. I remember checking the driver's license plate just in case, and it matched. The driver was Eric. All in all, he seemed like a completely normal guy, nothing that caught my attention. I got into the car and was surprised to see the space inside. It was a very big and luxurious car, the kind you don't see in Uber. What surprised me the most, and I don't even know if it's legal, is that I couldn't see the driver. He had his back turned, and a large space prevented me from getting close enough to try to see his face. Once I got in, the ride began immediately without the man saying a word to me. I greeted him, but he didn't answer me. I was feeling quite uncomfortable until suddenly he spoke to me in an incredibly natural way. Hello, how are you this evening? Oh, hi, I'm fine, thanks for asking. And so our journey began. The road was quite long, and according to the app, I would arrive in 24 minutes. Normally it would be a pretty long ride, but in Uber, everything was shorter, although I admitted that I was still pretty annoyed with my mother. I mean, it's not my fault that we live so far from the city center. The minutes passed and the trip was going pretty fast. The driver was nice conversation at all times, which didn't bother me. I needed to distract myself a little bit after the fight with my mother. Everything was going normal, but from one moment to the next, the conversation became much more personal. And tell me, do you live with your family? Yes, I live with my mother. Huh, you look a little uncomfortable with the question. I just fought with my mother. She didn't want me to go to my friend's house, so we had a big argument, and here I am. Oh, sorry to bring up the subject. No problem. But if you'll let me bring it up, mothers can be quite invasive. They never let their kids grow up. Kids are kids and will always be kids to them. You got that right, brother. Whatever the case may be, there's no reason to do what you did. What? What do you mean? Just ignore that I said something. His tone of voice had changed. There was something strange about him. Suddenly, I started to feel uncomfortable. I pulled back and started to use my cell phone. I didn't know the way, but I knew I would be there soon. I looked at my cell phone to see how much time I had left, and that's when I saw something that scared me. According to the Uber app, I would arrive at my destination in 38 minutes. Where was I? Where was this person taking me? Was this my Uber driver? I tried to stay calm and pretend I didn't know what was going on. The smartest thing I could do now was pretend I wasn't scared. Hey, excuse me, I think the app is bugged. Sometimes it happens to me. Can you tell me how close we are to my friend's house? We spent a few seconds in silence since he didn't answer me. He didn't even turn around for me to see his face. Hey, can you hear me? You shouldn't have done it, Rick. What? Do what? I don't know what you mean. Was it worth it? Suddenly, I could tell the car was getting faster and faster. I looked both sides of the window and realized that we were on the road. At what point had we arrived here? This man was not taking me to my friend's house. I was scared the whole time, but it was only then that I felt my life was really in danger. As I realized what was happening, I could see the car speeding up more and more. Hey, where are we? Answer me.
Hey, play new games and earn gift cards.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I hate it, bro.
It was horrible. His mouth, his eyes, his hair, he was melting. I could see the burnt skull behind his melted skin as the car kept accelerating on its crazy. Isn't that funny? No, 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 no! And that's all I remember. I see, Rick. I'm glad you were able to tell us what you remember.
Oh, God. Do you think he'll get better?
I don't know. He needs a lot of treatment and, more than anything, time.
Why do you think he thinks he murdered me?
It's too quick to define we're dealing with schizophrenia. How did you find him after he ran away?
We argued. He ran off. And when I came down to look for him, he was in an abandoned car in front of the house, crying.
Possibly he saw this car and linked it to an Uber. Rick's mind is very complex. From our side, we'll do everything we can to get him better so he can live a life that says normal.
Okay, guys, that is the second story. We are done. Bye, guys.